I've been looking forward to this panel session because people on this session, are you guys ready? No. Are you sure you're ready? I'm not feeling the vibes from here. Are you sure you're ready? Okay. I would introduce the panelists for this session and, introduce them to come up to the platform. I'll start with Tafadzwa Katiyo. Tafadzwa Katiyo is an entrepreneur, financial industry professional, and advocate for Africa's economic transformation. As CEO of Onwe Travel, a boutique global travel agency with a 30-year family legacy, she's committed to leveraging tourism as a driver of sustainable development and cross-border collaboration. Beyond leading Onwe Travel, Tafadzwa is the founder of Tosek Sonke, which means together. This initiative is dedicated to fostering collaboration, economic inclusion, and community empowerment across Africa and the diaspora. With over 2 decades of experience in alternative investments, she has played a strategic role in managing trade operations for hedge funds and asset management firms in New York, bridging global finance with emerging market opportunities. She's passionate about problem solving, lifelong learning, and transformative power of entrepreneurship. In her free time, she enjoys playing chess, Tunde is here, thankfully, traveling, and exploring diverse cultural perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tafadzwa Katiyo. Please keep it up. So next would be Alexander Smalls. Alexander Smalls, the legendary James Beard award-winning chef, author, and raconteur, was the visionary co-owner of renowned restaurants The Cecil and Minton's. His award-winning restaurant, The Cecil, New York City's first Afro-Asian American restaurant, was named Best New Restaurant in America by Esquire in 2014. Over the past 3 decades, the chef and restaurateur has traveled the world, studying the cooking techniques and food ways of the African diaspora. As the former chef owner of renowned restaurants, including Shoebox Cafe, Smalls has received great acclaim in the restaurant scene, including cooking at the James Beard House, being named one of the Zagats New York City restaurant power players you need to know, and being honored with the Legacy Award in 2014 by the Amsterdam News, one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the country. In addition to his success in the culinary world, Smalls' memoir and cookbook, Grace the Table, features recipes from his upbringing of Southern Revival cuisine. Smalls is also a world-renowned opera singer and the winner of both a Grammy Award and a Tony Award for the cast recording of Porgy and Bess by George Gershwin with the Houston Grand Opera. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Alexander Smalls. Very lovely to have you on this panel session, Mr. Smalls. Yeah, next is Tunde Onakoya. Tunde Onakoya is a dreamer, a social reformer, and Nigerian national chess master. In 2018, he founded Chess in Slums Africa, a non-profit organization that uses the game of chess as a framework to give children in impoverished communities access to education, technology, and mentorship. The impact of this initiative has reached far beyond the borders of Nigeria. I mean, they're in New York. Yay. With stories of transformation featured on global media platforms like BBC, Al Jazeera, and Deutsche Welle. Over 10,000 children's lives have been touched, with 500 children receiving fully funded scholarships to local and international institutions. Very round of applause. But Tunde's work doesn't stop there. It's a symbol of hope and possibilities, reminding us all that greatness knows no bounds. His mantra, "It is possible to do great things from a small place," echoes in the hearts of those he inspires. In 2023, he was listed as one of the 100 most impactful Africans by Ranks Africa. Tunde's efforts have earned him numerous accolades, including the Future Awards Africa Prize for Community Action in 2021 and the Royal African Award in 2022. Tunde Onakoya continues to be a beacon of inspiration, not just within the realms of chess, but in the broader context of using strategic thinking to shape a better world for all. Let's welcome Tunde Onakoya. Finally, this person is a star. Nikolai Wolfe. Nikolai Albert T.M. Wolfe is an accomplished attorney and cross-industry executive with over a decade of proven experience developing sustainable solutions to complex operational challenges. Renowned for his calibrated insights on leadership, innovation, stakeholder engagement, regulatory compliance, and policy implementation, Nikolai thrives at the intersection of strategy and execution. Nikolai holds both a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Civil Engineering from New York University, as well as a Juris Doctor from Brooklyn Law School. Nikolai is also a licensed real estate broker, is the immediate past president of the NYU Alumni Association, where he successfully led a constituency of over 700,000 people across the world. In addition to his pro bono legal work, Nikolai's passion for mentorship, community building, and volunteerism reflects his faith in God and underscores his belief that true success begins with empowering others. Nikolai lives in New Jersey with his beautiful wife and growing family. Let's welcome Nikolai. It's such a privilege to be here with you. You guys have the wealth of wisdom, you've walked the path, and you are in a perfect position to educate us and inspire us based on your journey and your wealth of experience. I will just, ask questions and go around, and sometimes just go in between, so don't just get ready for my questions. Yeah, so I'll start with Tunde Onakoya. Big congratulations to the kids from Chess in Slums in doing so well in Atlanta, Georgia, and also, participating in the UN Games. Please let's say big congratulations to them for that. I mean, that's super inspiring and quite impactful. I mean, Bolali covered that when she was having our own session. And I mean, it's very, very much inspiring to every one of us. So you have used chess as a tool to give children access to education and mentorship. You have, transformed the lives of so many kids from, like you say, it is, possible to do great things from a small place. What was the turning point? What was that, driving force? That moment where you knew that, chess has the power to be used as a tool for social reform?
Oh, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'd first like to say thank you to Onyekon, because me being here today has been a roller coaster. I've had to cancel twice, then I had to say, oh, I can make it. Oh, something came up, I can make it. And I felt really bad, but despite all of my own inconstant behavior, they still ensured that I can be here today, and I had everything I needed. So let's give them a round of applause, I guess. The last couple of weeks have been very overwhelming. The children have been trying to bankrupt me. They've been eating so much M&Ms. And I'm like, have you guys been to America before? Because how do you have such fancy taste for all the good things? Yeah, but of course it's been a deeply fulfilling experience for me, because I came to America for the first time last year, March actually. And my time here was an inflection point. A lot has happened since then. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to come back here someday again, not alone, but with children. And that dream became a reality. And I'm currently in New York with 5 children from the Chess and Slums program who have inspired the world. They spoke alongside me at the United Nations they recently won a gold medal at the United Nations Games. They won the Chess and Community Conference. So in some sense, I get to also live vicariously through them again. Now, to answer your question, so Yoruba people would say Onokon Waja. There are many entry points into the market, right? I think it's hard for me to say there was one particular moment where I had that epiphany that, wow, this is what chess can do. I think it has been like a lot of things that happen over time. But the very first one, that was very critical to even birthing an idea like this is deeply connected to my own personal story, right? I grew up in a very small village in Ikorodu, in Lagos. I lived all my life in Lagos, by the way. The first time I ever stepped outside Nigeria was just 3 years ago. I've been to a lot of places since then, but I grew up in a small community where nothing happens, right? And there was also a phase where I didn't have access, we couldn't go to school, for a number of years. And that was when I saw a chessboard, just the times I didn't want to follow my mom to the market, I would just lie that I wasn't feeling fine. And I would go to this barber shop. I saw a chessboard there for the first time. And I was 10. So my realization then was, this game, the pieces were so beautifully carved. And it was the kind of thing that a child would see that would make a child very curious. And I was a curious child. But I didn't understand it then because we can only connect those dots in hindsight. But what chess did for me was, it gave me a way to, really forge my own identity. Right, and the science of it talks about how chess, builds cognition, critical thinking, strategy, all of these skills that are maybe transferable in some context. But the real essence of it for me was, it gave me a way to forge my identity, right? And this is what I consider the real, tragedy of poverty, that children grow up in this environment that fully forms them, fully conditions them before they have their own agency. So, in essence, they become victims of their parents' poverty and the environment in which they grow up in. And that is why, poverty in Africa is self-sustaining, right? It goes in this vicious cycles over time because the environment really is destiny, And for me, chess was the disruptive thing that happened that allowed me just expand my world just a little bit. I went out of my community for the first time for a tournament. I started to see that there was a much larger world beyond this confine. So chess literally set my life on a much different trajectory. I went to college on a scholarship because I was on the chess team. And that was how chess changed my life. And 7 years ago, I made that same decision to use it as a tool to help other children like me also forge their own identities, albeit an intellectual one, where they can be defined by what they have the ability to do. Right? That was how I understood it then, but it has also evolved over time. And now, it's more like even the science of it, in using chess as a way to provide a very simple entry point into education for children, right? Because there are 20 million children out of school in Nigeria alone. And if you don't find a simple entry point that can scale very easily within the community, then it will be so hard to include them in any conversation. So that is how chess, has been a tool for social impact for us.
Thank you so much, Tunde. That response absolutely resonates with me in terms of using what you have interest in, forging your own identity, and then transferring that to do same for themselves. That's absolutely inspiring. So, Nikolai, when I got to know that you transitioned from a career in civil engineering to law, I'm lost for words to describe how I felt, because I have been in this legal education journey for a while, and I know how challenging it can be. So transitioning from civil engineering, which is equally and even more challenging, if I say so myself, to law, how did that come about? But specifically, how did your transition from a STEM background, civil engineering to be precise, to a non-STEM field, becoming a lawyer, influence your approach to leadership and problem solving, particularly in your role as the president of the NYU Alumni Association?
Thank you, Favor. And first I'll say, nothing but the grace of God. Nothing but the grace of God. And I have to start my response with that, because if I tell you it was by my own strength, by my own might, by my own plan, I'd be lying. It was the grace, because I needed it to sustain through the difficulties and the challenges that confronted me, and even to be able to navigate a path forward where sometimes there was no path, and to just create it fearlessly. But I'd say at the time that I began my presidency of the NYU Alumni Association, we were representing approximately, as you said, 700,000 people. And that's people who hail from different countries, different cultures, who have different religious and ideological beliefs, people from different generations, different genders. Every dimension of diversity was captured in that 700,000. And the question was, how do you effectively engage such a broad spectrum, such a diverse group? And not only that, after you've engaged, how do you inspire, motivate them to some action, to some expected end, to something that's beneficial, not only for the individual, but for the entire community? And when I began, I knew that there was great expectations. I was the first Black male to be in a position, the youngest person, and I knew that failure was not an option. But that's when I began to rely on the grace and the experiences that I had previously. And I realized that, very simply, people are people. People are people. The constructs that we have of differences between us, a lot of that is a facade. At the core, people are people. The same people I encountered in law, the same people I encountered in engineering, the same people I encountered in real estate, or any other area that I was engaged in, all wanted the same things at the end, right? They wanted a sense of belonging. So in leadership, it was, how do I create a culture that is welcoming to people, that they feel they can show up in their best light and flourish? The second, recognition. How do you acknowledge who people are at an individual level? And then respect, right? And as leadership, creating platforms where people can express themselves in ways that they want to, and in ways that make them feel empowered, and in ways that connect them to others. So it was really just leveraging that simple understanding: people are people, people are people, treat people with respect, give them a place to fit in, and then allow them to express themselves without any fear or hesitation. Just be a good and effective support system. And that was necessary throughout. We had just gotten out of COVID. People forget about COVID, but there was a time where everyone was shut down from social connections. So as we were re-emerging, how to rebuild those connections in a way that was to the theme, sustainable.
Thank you so much, Nikolai. Fantastic response. I mean, two things that stood out for me is failure is not an option. Failure is never an option. I know a lot of us can resonate with that in the room, and people would always be people. Their needs are similar, right? So look for a way to, use your influence in, standing out and impacting lives. So moving on to Alexander Smalls, chef. I mean, a lot of people have been saying they're hungry, and a lot of people identify as foodies in the house. If you're a foodie, can you just say hi? Hi! Okay, it's like a big thing now. It used to be like a bad thing in the past, or maybe not so bad, but now it's like a funky thing to say, oh, I'm a foodie. I know a lot of people can say that on TikTok. Yeah. So, your work has been very instrumental in elevating African and African diasporic cuisine on the global stage. I mean, even from your cookbook, Grace, the cookbook and the book tours, right? I believe that your work has supernaturally, if I could say so myself, elevated African cuisine beyond the US. So the Sicily is known for pioneering Afro-Asian cuisine. So what really inspired you to merge these culinary traditions, and how can cross-cultural innovation in food drive broader conversations about identity and unity?
Very complicated question. Let me first say hello to everyone. I am honored to be here. And I want to share two important things about my work with you that we missed in the introduction, but because I'm here with such brilliant young Africans, and this was a love letter from me to Africa, two of the things that I just are most recent on my resume, I opened the first African dining hall in the world in Dubai 4 years ago. Yes, 22,000 square feet, 11 concepts. And it really was just a labor of love. From a child, I always tried to understand who I was. Interestingly enough, through music and food. Those were the two languages I spoke as a child, and the lens in which I saw the world. Coming from a Gullah Geechee household, some of you may know that word, these are direct descendants from West Africa. I grew up in Charleston, Beaufort, and the Gullah Islands off of the coast. And the thing that you know about people from Gullah Geechee, and it's unique in America, is that you can always tell who we are by the food that we eat. And our food is so, your jollof rice is my red rice. Same recipe, and essentially coming from Charleston, South Carolina, which was for over 100 years the richest city in the world because of enslaved Africans brought from West Africa who built that for America. So, my connection with Africa has been since I was a child. And after opening my first 3 restaurants in New York, the Cecil Cafe Beulah, Shoebox Cafe in Grand Central Station, I took a 10-year hiatus and I traveled throughout the, essentially the African slave routes, across Atlantic, Far Eastern. Essentially, I wanted to understand the footprint of enslaved people and their contributions around the world. I mean, this was really the first extraordinary product that came out of Africa that was the foundation of culinary excellence. And essentially, we are just making it up now because our food and who we are through our legacy has been denied. It has been treated like it was inferior. And so we're having that conversation to say, not on my watch. This is not who we are. So it was a privilege to open that dining hall and set a standard that hopefully I will be able to bring to London and New York in 2026. I'd also like to say that effort of the African Food Hall led to my latest book that came out in November, The Contemporary African Kitchen, a celebration of the food of Africa. And essentially, I solicited the support of 30 leading chefs of Africa, North, South, East, West, and Central, to help me bring the foods of the continent to the world. The book is in French and in English, so please share it, own it, and feel like it's your story, because it is. It's ours. Thank you.
Well, I'm yet to recover from jollof rice being called red rice. That's one thing that stood out for me. I absolutely get the inspiration behind your journey in the culinary industry, and I'm amazed and inspired by it. But that is just a subtle point I wanted to put out there. Yeah.
I know how you all are about jollof rice. You and Nigeria and Ghana didn't have this conversation. I'm not throwing my hat. I'm not throwing my hat into it. I'm just simply saying this is where we connect, folks.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Alexander Smalls. So Tafadzwa, you are a force. That's like the best word I can come up with right now. But you are an African woman that has done, a lot in the global stage, from finance to global impact, technically. So as an African woman who is a business founder, in your own opinion, do you think talent, innovation, and culture, are ever enough for impact, right? Because the theme of this, panel session is harnessing talent, innovation, and culture as drivers for social impact. Do you think those 3 factors are just enough for social impact? Do you think there's a place for character, collaboration, and mentorship as well? And just share your thoughts with us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for all the people who took time out to come for this event. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is talent, especially when it comes in the context of Africa, because talent and innovation, yes, they are major forces and a driver, but to echo the sentiments of most of the panel speakers, self-awareness is pretty much a cornerstone of one of the things that eventually I came to realize that the sooner that my self-awareness, when I reached that point, that was the key turning point in me not only rediscovering the roots, but also showing up in spaces, be it on Wall Street, be it in philanthropy and others, anywhere where I showed up, I could now be truly myself, authentic, and then bring all the experience that came from being African to the stage, and realize that every single moment and every step of the way, you're being led to nurture your talent so that you can express that in whatever field. So there are points and technicalities where, for example, in chess, you learn to strategize, and people are talking about governance. So in Africa, all those little nuggets that you're experiencing that seem like challenges, those are pivotal beyond the innovation, because learning how to turn that challenge into a solution is what's going to propel the continent to the next level.
Wow, that's amazing. Finally, for this round of questions, Tunde, what has been the biggest challenge in expanding innovation in education and mentorship programs like Chess in Slums Africa beyond Nigeria? I mean, your kids are currently in New York, yay. What has been like the biggest challenge, and how have you been able to work around those challenges, if there are more than one?
The biggest one is money, of course.
Okay.
Money is always a problem, because if you want to change the world, someone has to pay for it. And it's easy to have, your delusional ideas, which are really good. You should be as delusional as possible, because the world is extremely, extremely unkind to entrepreneurs. People who decide to go against the grain and say, we want to change something, right? We're not going to accept the status quo, right? So from the very beginning, for me, it was saying, chess can be a tool in helping children in poverty. And when you say something like that, the first question I got was, how would chess put food on the table? And what makes an idea complete is when other people can believe in it, and when other people can find their place in it, right? And the first believers have to be people that maybe they don't really understand, but they believe in you, right? So you're the first point of knowing that, this vision is attainable. So of course, for that reason, it was hard to convince people to invest in it. So money was the first real challenge. We had all these grand ideas. I had really developed a chess and math curriculum that I wanted to use to give children an entry point, like I said earlier, into education. Because I believe education, beyond this organized four walls, it's the capacity for thought, for independent thinking, for problem solving, right? And I thought, how do we redefine education, in a way that can give these children that have never been to school, to give them a beginning or some semblance of education. And again, when you go against the grain like that, it's hard for people to invest in it, right? But if you do it long enough and well enough, people become believers. So money, yes, real challenge. And the thing with also working with children is you have to take a very long-term position. You can empower an adult with capital and walk away. But with kids, it's a bit more complex, right? Say you want to support a child's education now. You put them in basic 1. It's a cycle of 12 years, from that basic education to secondary school. So do you just do 1 year and leave it at that? So you have to have a very clear roadmap, and you have to figure out how to fund that. The second thing is talent. Now, the idea of like scale for me was, okay, how can we codify this idea, this chess, teaching chess, this chess curriculum at community level? How can we codify it and not scale it across the board? But scaling was hard because it was going to dilute the level of like quality of training that was required. We needed trainers, we needed certified trainers, we needed educators. You know, we had a very advanced curriculum, all of these things. So we started to explore the idea of spread, you know, which is what took me a long time to understand, right? I used to think the impact of the work that we did was truly validated in the lives of the children we're impacting, like taking the kids from 0 to 1. But the more I started traveling, started meeting people all over the world, I said, Tunde, oh, because of you I started this, or because of you I started to do this. And it dawned on me that there were also other believers that, you know, found validation because they saw me just doing what I was doing. And being able to partner with them helped us spread, right? Without really scaling and being in the details of everything. And with that, you know, we now have centers in 22 African countries now. You know, we've made a lot of progress. We certainly built an innovation hub, you know, in Lagos with Lufthansa. And the problem with talents now is that there are a lot of young people that do not want to do NGO or charity because it isn't exactly a prestigious thing. Right? And this will be my final thought. When I started Changing Slums, I was 23, you know, 7 years ago. And it wasn't the typical cool thing for a young person to do. A lot of people were going into tech, they were jackbuying. I couldn't even jackbuy then because I was owing the woman on my streets 200 naira. So I couldn't leave, you know, but I also knew that I was very gifted in being able to learn anything. I finished from school with computer science, and I also wanted to jackpot, but I didn't exactly have the means. And after considering all my options, I arrived at this final decision to use the one talent that I had and give it out for free by working with children who cannot pay me for it. When you do something like that, you're going to suffer for it. But the beautiful thing about taking the road less traveled like that is you get to blaze a new trail for others to follow. And this is what I think should be the real challenge, the real African challenge for all of us here. Because prestige can be a trap, right? And money in itself isn't as dangerous because you're not going to do OnlyFans for money, even if you make a lot of money from it. It's not a prestigious thing to say, oh, what do you do? Well, I do OnlyFans. You know, but what can be extremely dangerous is when you put something that is prestigious and also makes a lot of money together. Being an investment banker, being a tech founder, you know, being all of these fancy things, you know. But the challenge for all of us isn't to pursue the things that are fancy or that have these fancy titles. Is that the problems that need to be solved, you know, at the granular level are very, very local. And it's very dirty work. And it's sometimes not prestigious, right? And we need to challenge ourselves to be able to solve those hard, critical problems, even when it isn't something the world is paying attention to, right? I'm not saying we shouldn't pursue all the things that give us a network and resource, but when we do that, we must know that our purpose, and the only way to justify that privilege, is to take it and go back to solving the things that are not glamorous. It is the only way we can justify our privilege, and that is where the real deficit is that all the talents that we have that are wasted on exits, startup exits. How about, you know, freeing people from poverty? And not in a way that sort of like preys on them or uses their story, you know, to get grants and all of that, but in a way that truly, truly seeks to understand the problem, to be deeply curious at solving it. And if we can do that, you know, collectively, then we can start to bridge the gap. And the only way to do that is to ask ourselves here that, as we're in this room, all beautifully dressed, that who is not present here, and how can we stand in the gap for them?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's round of applause is well deserved. You know, he said something that Bolani mentioned earlier. You know, partnering with people that they're interested in the same thing that you're interested in. They have what you don't have. For example, funds. Right, and bringing your dreams to life with that partnership or collaboration. and using what you have, the resources you have, to solve issues that are not so glamorous. I think that absolutely resonates with me and something I'll be taking from this panel session. So let's talk sustainability. I mean, our theme for this conference is, charting the path, using our African global influence to chart the path for sustainable development. Tafadzwa, you are in the tourism industry, and you're a CEO of a well incorporated, tourism-focused business. Tourism is often seen as a major contributor to environmental challenges, with ESG compliance requirements these days. What strategies do you think can be implemented to make the travel industry more eco-friendly in Africa?
So pretty much with conservation, especially in Southern Africa, there's so many programs that they've instituted, including things like award shows. So you find that most of the countries are participating in curating award shows that they give to certain communities that are able to sustain and protect their environments, because they're looking to the future, and through those programs also extending knowledge to the local communities. So you find that there's less poaching when the local communities are involved. So a lot of governments have been on the forefront of leading those conservation efforts. And then in terms of just investment dollars coming into the continent, you find that there are several programs, especially in real estate, where local communities get the opportunity to build like the small huts and create an environment where internationals can come to visit for tourism, to experience what it's like being in a luxury hut or a basic hut. Like, they have different tiers similar to Airbnb. So being able to keep that sustainable way of building has also been another way that on the African continent they've been addressing such issues. And then just, foreign direct investment. So to put things in perspective, during the pandemic, so like from 2019 through 2023, the United Arab Emirates invested close to 110 billion. That's what they committed to investing on the African continent, and 72 billion of that is earmarked for renewable energy. So you can see that in terms of the rest of the world, they can see the potential and they see what we have. So now in terms of, we as Africans now need to also see what we carry, and not only that, invest in ourselves. And while investing in the foreign markets is good, but now also taking an active role in seeing what are the people from the United Arab Emirates seeing when they're pledging that capital, and can we start amongst ourselves and within the continent start seeing that same capacity.
Thank you so much for that response. So, Alexander Smalls, Africa's food culture is gaining more global recognition. I mean, even from your cookbook, Grace the Table, you have been involved in so many book tours, based on your cookbook. How can Africa's food culture increased visibility be leveraged to advocate for more sustainable food production and consumption practices worldwide?
I didn't get
So
that.
my question is, how can the increased visibility that the increased visibility that the food culture, Africa's food culture has gained, how can it be leveraged in making more sustainable food production processes worldwide?
Well, I think many of the sustainable techniques that are in use that may not be attributed to Africa are already there. the interesting thing about Africa and its culture, it's not new. It's been there, it's been appropriated, it's been called other things, but it's always been there. There is, you know, a number of quality products created on the continent. You have the miracle grain fonio that is in West Africa, probably the healthiest grain on the planet, that now is having a resurgence, and you know, people are starting to learn about its properties and its value and its sustainability. You know, and then you talk about cooking techniques. You know, the African people have always been able to multi-purpose, you know, in their products, and also in their cooking techniques and treatments, etc., from fermentation to canning to creating menus, for example, that are useful. You know, if you make you know, rice for breakfast, then you repurpose it in your other food products. You cut down on waste by recycling ingredients into a more comprehensive menu, etc. You know, I think that so much waste is a mentality. It's a cultural expression that comes out of, you know, countries who have oftentimes they're capitalist countries. They have lots of money and they throw everything away. I mean, even in this country alone, as a restaurateur, it was very hard to give away food products and meet the standards of the health authority and all of this. I adopted a couple of nonprofit organizations in Harlem that I was allowed to recycle food products to. Food that was very good. You check some of the foods that are being thrown out in supermarkets, etc. You know, the expiration date is more about being able to replenish stock and sell you more stuff, as opposed to, did this product really go bad? So, you know, these practices are government practices, and you know, until we can change that mindset, you know, look to your grandmothers, look to how they preserved. It's pretty extraordinary. My point is that the lessons are there, they're already in our cultural expression. We just have to adopt those and not all the Western bad habits that we employ.
Yeah. Adapt the heritage that we already have. That's a very great response. Thank you. Nikolai, given your background in civil engineering, what are some sustainable infrastructure solutions that could be game changers for African cities? These are some of like the conversations that the World Bank and, you know, the IFC would have in terms of infrastructure projects. But based on your experience and, you know, your background in civil engineering, what's your opinion on this?
Now, this is an easy one. Number one cornerstone of, I think, a nation transitioning from a developed nation to a developed nation is a stable and reliable power grid, period. A stable and reliable power grid at the generation, transmission, and distribution levels. If you are a nation that can't adequately serve industrial and commercial customers, you can never scale. Certain businesses won't go there because they can't operate, period. Right? So what are the GDP impacts to that? And even beyond large-scale commercial and industrial, just think about the citizens of the nation, the people who are actually there. If they don't have reliable access or access to reliable power, in a practical way, children can't study at night. Businesses have to close at a certain time. It impacts the quality of life for citizens. And so a stable power grid is the very beginning of the conversation. And once you have a stable power grid, then we have to talk about transportation. How do you move goods and people within the nation? And how do you actually move goods and people to the nation and out? So we're talking about not just roads, bridges, tunnels. We're talking about airports. We're talking about ports for coastal cities. I'll tell you that 1956 was a game changer for the United States, and I'll use that as an example. When then President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Highways Act, right? And what that did was authorize construction for 41,000 miles of interstate highway. And think about what that did. That enabled every person with a vehicle or access to a vehicle in this country to go from Florida to Seattle, Washington. From east to west, north to south, there were no physical barriers to your mobility. And that changed the game. If we can do the same thing and apply the same concepts, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Just apply what's already proven to work. Just do what's already proven to work. Then I think that's the game changer. But that said, if you want to have reliable power, if you want to have infrastructure, to your point, you need money. You need money, you need access to capital. And you need access to capital on terms that don't bind your country, right? Where you can actually pay back the loan and not forfeit the infrastructure. So I think if we, as within the diaspora, can figure out how to really apply lessons that we've seen and do it not to get to where folks are now, but anticipate where the world is going and then aim for that as a target, I think the sky is the limit for the continent.
Thank you so much for your response. So Tunde, my final question for you is, it is possible to do great things from a great place has inspired many. What would be your advice to young Africans who have big dreams to be agents of change and global influence?
I'll tell you this. It is not, I think the first thing you need to know is it is not enough to have a heart for the poor. You need to have a mind for the poor. And you need to have a true mind for the ones who bear the brunt of the wrong policies, basically, like who bear the brunt of everything that's wrong with Africa as a continent. The government, the lack of infrastructure, right? And there's a clear distinction between both things. An interesting example is always like during Dirty December, you see Nigerians in the diaspora, they come home, and of course they have a heart to want to give back, and they try to, they get bags of rice, spaghetti, they go to these communities, distribute it, it is good. Don't get me wrong, and it solves an immediate need, right? Because if you don't do that, things are so bad that people are literally starving to death. And you begin to think about a world where, on one end of the spectrum, people can wear $5 million watches, and at the other end, people don't have $2 to afford a meal. And that just tells you that something is wrong by design, right? And that gap, there have to be people like you, people like us, who are willing to stand in it, right? Give the haves the context to understand the suffering of the have-nots and be able to find the right solutions to help the have-nots be included in these conversations, right? Because what really is poverty is exclusion from systems, rule of law, education, all of these things that we know what the problems are. So if you really want to change that situation, you need to move beyond, distributing rice, spaghetti, every now and then, to having a mind for the poor, And when you do this, then you have given yourself the level of seriousness that change demands. Change isn't a simple thing. In my journey of church and slums, we've had to face so much complexity. I don't even talk about it because people see, online and you carry it with so much grace. But there's a lot of extreme difficulty that it comes with as well. And that is my own journey to embrace, right? A lot of people are disillusioned by how hard it is to do anything, right? So you need to prepare your mind for that, right? And to be able to push against that requires you having the presence of mind, being able to really exert yourself, all of the education that you have, everything prepares you to be able to solve that problem. That is the first thing. So we must stop just thinking about change as a very simple thing. Oh, there's people that are hungry, let's give them food, because that is not the real issue. Like, hunger isn't an issue of like of charity. It's an issue of justice, right? And there are many ways to think about that and apply that to the context of your own life, right? But this, like I said, is the seriousness it demands. And a very simple way to know what to do, what to solve, how to work on a problem that is important not just to you, but to the development of Africa, is finding that intersection between what is your own personal pain, or it could even be a privilege that you have, that you've enjoyed, right? And another person's oppression. For me, it was chess. You know, I was really talented. I was one of the best in the country. I could use that for personal gain. There's nothing wrong with that. I wanted to jackpot, go to Europe, you know, compete in the best tournaments. I'd won a couple of tournaments in Nigeria, and that is how to use your talent and your skill to serve yourself, right? But the moment you decide to take that, right, and give it to someone else, then it becomes a gift to them. And this entire civilization, as we know it today, has been that men and women of great skill, great talent, great eloquence, whatever it is, they decided to use that, nurture it, hone it, and when the time was right, they decided to give it back to the world as a gift. And that is why we can use this iPhone. Because Steve was a crazy guy, you know, that had this design thinking ability and birthed this product into the world. We must think of our talents, our gifts, our privilege in that way. And in some sense, there has to be a way it intersects with a problem that we need to solve. So it's not too far from who we are, you know. And on that journey of becoming, I hope you know that impact sometimes isn't, like I said, isn't going to bring you a lot of prestige, right? But you'll be solving an important and fundamental problem. And when you do it long enough, it will become prestigious.
Thank you so much. It's a round of applause for all the panelists in this session. This has been a very loaded and informative, super insightful session, and it has been my absolute honor to do this with you. We have come to the end of this session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your wealth of wisdom that you shared with us. We'll just